Hey, you found the Midwest Motoring Podcast. We're an automotive podcast about just about, well, everything automotive. From news, reactions, reviews, and everything and anything in between. We're kind of like one of those long road trips you take where you get lost and you don't know where you're at, but suddenly you find where you're going and you look back fondly on that journey and go, that was half the fun. So come along and enjoy the ride with us. Welcome back to the Midwest Motoring Podcast. My name is Matt Pesconis. I'm your host. It is the year 2022, and it's so awesome that you guys came back to join us. We're starting a whole new year of recording, and we've got a lot of great topics to talk about. And I'm so excited to be joined once again by Jess Myers, James Fisher, and Alex Garanzini. Got it. That one was a tough one. But we're in our makeshift studio, and we've got a lot of cool things to talk about today. We're going to talk about Hagerty released their 2022 bull market review. That's a review where they kind of talk about the new, hip, and upcoming cars for collectors to be looking out for. We're going to talk about really big movers in terms of value because 2021 classic car and exotic car markets have just been exploding over the couple of years. And then we're going to check in with our panelists and see how they're doing and see what they've got going on for 2022 and how their 2021s ended up. So come along for the ride with us and just sit back and enjoy. This one's going to be a pretty fun one, I think. So all that and more on this episode of the Midwest Motoring Podcast. Gentlemen, I'm so glad that we're back at it. It's been quite some time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, and that's on me. Kids and life and everything. But new year, new us.
That's an excuse?
I think that's the only excuse that might be okay. Also, I'm really bad at managing my time. So that's the better response.
I would say same, yeah.
So what have you guys been up to?
You know, just working.
Working, hitting the grindstone?
Yep, pretty much.
What have you done anything fun with cars yet? I know it's early 2022.
This year, no, I have not. I guess the only interesting thing is I don't know who he is, but a guy in my apartment complex. When I moved there, he had a GTR.
Okay.
And then until a couple days ago, he had a MP412C.
Oh, dang.
And then now he's got a C8. So I don't know what he's doing.
Apartment complex.
Yes.
He's flipping cars is what that sounds like.
He's a drug dealer.
And I'm not going to say, but I did see him driving that McLaren around with a flat. So.
Ooh.
And it's in a parking garage type situation.
I have seen a lot of on Instagram, a lot of the car content creators with their hypercars posting when the check engine light comes on, and they're responsive oh crap, what are we gonna do, right? But so we have apparently drug dealers in Alex's complex changing out cars like he changes out his underwear.
Hopefully.
James, hopefully. James, what have you been up to, man?
Bought a house. That's exciting.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, first house.
Why aren't we doing that there? Why aren't we doing this there?
Well, partially because we're still doing a bathroom renovation and kitchen stuff. And, eventually we will probably do it
so
there.
So when's the studio getting built?
That's on the list. It's fairly low on the list, but, because bedroom and
you
place
don't need to
eat.
sleep.
Yeah, But, yeah, so it's been pretty busy.
You finally have a home for your Mustang.
Yeah, exactly. Not that it didn't, because I did have a garage at my apartment, but big 700 square foot garage. I'm pretty stoked about.
I got some space.
Yeah, I got some space for some projects now, so we'll see. Maybe tax time.
Get a quick lift or something like that.
Yeah, get a lift or something. Maybe we'll get a project car in there and see what we come up with. So
we got a lot going on. James, Jess, wow. It's been really long.
It's been way too long.
Jess, what's going on, man? What have you been up to?
Not much. I mean, coolest thing I've done with a car since 2021 was getting my chip in my windshield repaired. So it was
thrilling.
It was a blast, honestly.
Using that safe light.
Oh yeah, you know it. So.
Oh, don't do that. We'll get.
Please I'm not getting.
I'm not getting.
Sponsor us.
Yeah, I'm not getting paid for that.
So I haven't been super busy, just kind of hanging out.
You've been doing some watch stuff recently. You've been telling us about a watch club you're part of.
Yeah, so I'm a part of a group called 614 Watches here in the Columbus area, where it's just a bunch of people that kind of like cars. There's a pretty big community of watch nerds.
I just bought a Seiko 5 and a
Nice.
Citizen Eco Drive, so
Nice.
I had
Cool.
I had a bug for a nice watch. I'm tired of this Apple Watch yelling at me. How
Yep.
can I help you?
Yep.
Shut up,
I
Siri.
don't wear my Apple Watch very often. Just got one, but it's kind of gonna sit for most of its life.
I like. I mean, we got a Peloton for Christmas, so I like for fitness tracking. But then I'm like, beyond that, I kind of want just a watch. I don't need my.
That's
wrist.
kind of what I bought it for. Was more of the active stuff.
Now, please tell me you didn't buy your wife a Peloton for Christmas. Like, was this a joint thing, or was
this was a
like,
joint? No, this was for
Okay.
the house.
Okay.
I'm not falling.
Do you have the
Yeah, you're not doing that?
Do you have Peloton shoes?
I do.
Ooh,
They
wow.
they come with the bike.
Oh,
Wow. So you have your little riding shoes.
Clip-ins. Yeah.
Nice.
Pelotons use clips, so
Yeah.
You have to.
It's like a legit
It's like a legit.
bike
Road bike.
for
also legit. It is like the only way that your legs will continue to work after a workout because you equally have to pull up on the pedals as much as push down. So it's a
impact. What do they call it? An impact bike or whatever.
I have no idea. You probably know more than I do.
They're pretty crazy.
My wife was like, "Should we get a Peloton?" I was like, "Sure," and she went out and bought a Peloton for the house. So I was like, "Okay."
Oh, so she bought you the Peloton.
And she said I was fat.
Yeah.
I need
Thank
to.
God she
I need to
said
get
that.
some aviation gin.
You need to lose that baby weight. Is what you need to do.
It's called sympathy weight for
Yeah,
a
okay.
reason. Yeah, she must be listening. She just texted. Thanks, babe. Everyone loves that. She's making pizza at home and she's having a hard time.
Well,
As one does.
Is
As
she
one
making
does
enough
indeed.
for us too? Or why aren't you asked why we're not filming or recording this at my house? Why aren't we recording this at your house?
Do you guys want to travel to Delaware?
No, sir.
no,
It's not that far. I mean,
it's pretty far.
It's 20 minutes from here.
yeah,
I've
it's not
been.
bad.
It's pretty far.
Well, it's not from here that it's a bad thing. It's when you're done, from here and you're like, oh, I want to go home. Oh, it's an hour to Hilliard. Great. That's when it becomes a bit of an issue.
Yeah, he's got a point there.
It's not always that bad, though. I've done it. This has been real interesting to talk about what we're doing in our lives. Welcome aboard,
It's a whole
folks.
lot of nothing except
oh,
James, man.
We're starting off with a really, really good one, so let's just dive right in. Bull market review. What in tarnation is the bull market review? We've talked about them before. Jess, why don't you take us through what a bull market review is?
Yeah, so each year, Hagerty, being pretty much one of the authorities on vehicle values, comes out with a list of cars that they're seeing a big uptick in the car community or the hobby as far as the values go. Cars that they think are going to appreciate in value and have already started appreciating in value. And that's kind of what it is. It's just their picks for kind of the future, so...
And they don't just cover like one type of car either, do they?
No, absolutely not. It's all over the board. I mean, we have imports, new modern vehicles. We have anything from sedans to convertibles to wagons.
Yes.
It's crazy to think though, that we do this. Well, I say we, but Hagerty does this because they've got teams that just. That's all they do is pay attention to the values of these things. And they focus on all types of vehicles. We've got even, like last year, I think they had motorcycles in there. This year, we're really touching base on a lot of cool stuff. James, why don't you take us into number one? What is the first vehicle on that list? Or I guess we could also touch base on like what you think is the most interesting one on that list.
Yeah, we could do either way. I think, number one, I have to get back to the top of the list here. This is great radio or podcast. First one on the list is 1973 Ferrari 246 Dino GTS. I think we all know Ferraris are going to be something that they hold their value. I think it's kind of unique that we're able to identify a Ferrari where there might be an opportunity to get a value or get a deal per se on a car, and it's still a Number 2 condition, excellent condition values are still, 366 to 402. But, the point of this list is to say, hey, we think this car, you could buy this today and it might be kind of like an investment piece, right? So we're looking at the car and saying, maybe in the future, there's going to be a pretty significant increase in that value. And, buy now, strike while the iron's hot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a really interesting one on this list, actually. It's one that I personally thought would have started to go up a lot sooner than now. But it's, it's kind of an interesting classic Ferrari, being that it is a V6. It's not a V12 or V8 or anything. And as far as I know, this is their first foray into a mid-engine layout. Beforehand, of course, the traditional Ferrari layout is front engine, V12 usually, rear-wheel drive. But this was really the first mid-engine Ferrari, which, of course, if you ask most people now, what do you think of as a Ferrari? It's going to be a mid-engine car. So it's really interesting to see kind of the beginning of what everyone knows a Ferrari to be nowadays in this car. And personally, I think they're gorgeous as well. I've always really liked Dinos, but you just don't hear too much about them, and it's finally time for them to get their light here.
There's been a couple interesting stories out there about Dinos. There's one out in California that was buried for like 70 years. And it is a very good-looking car. I think for the most part, it oozes Ferrari, even though for a long time Ferrari enthusiasts did not think of it as a Ferrari.
Well, and I could be wrong, but was Dino not supposed to be like its own brand before he passed?
That I don't know of. I would assume that that's something that, is similar. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I do believe, like, with its own badging, with its own kind of
Right.
exclusivity, where it's completely different than any other Ferrari. They don't have it badged on the front with a prancing horse. They literally have it with
Got the
Dino
badges, yeah.
and it might be something where I'd have to look, but I think you're right. They were going to make like a line of Dinos where that was going to be kind of a car that they were going to keep introducing new models of the Dino. But it really ended up being kind of a standalone car there. They haven't really reintroduced it or done anything with that name since.
Yeah, and I do know that they were trying to build a less expensive, more entry-level Ferrari when they built the Dino, which is why a lot of Ferrari people are like, it's not a real Ferrari. I mean, hate to break it to you, it came from the mind of,
Of Enzo.
Yeah. So it is a real Ferrari. As much as people say it's not, you can look and see like they've got like the Dino 206 S Berlinetta is an amazing looking car.
They're beautiful, and they're also like shockingly small.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
not big cars at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing this one on there because me being around like cars for quite some time, like I've seen a couple Dinos and I'm always like, man, those are pretty expensive, but in the grand scheme of classic collectible Ferraris, they are on the low end for something that they didn't produce a ridiculous amount of them. It was a fairly limited run, and yeah, I guess that's why people are keeping an eye on them, because they could potentially be the next $1 million Ferrari.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, price when new, $14,500. That's nothing. Well, I mean, that's back in, the 60s and whatnot.
Yeah.
But so we just insured one for a guy at $500,000 too. So
Yeah.
$402,000, where they're saying the number 2 value is still not even the top value on these things. They're gorgeous, and the ones, it had a target top. That's pretty cool for the day, right? What Ferrari had a target top?
Yeah, and I mean, Pininfarina cars are always going to be beautiful, no matter what it is. I mean, there's always going to be a level of design to these cars that just, they almost always hold up forever. They're just beautiful pieces of art.
The interesting thing to note, is the next vehicle on that list is the Pontiac Gto, the 1966 to 67 Pontiac Gto. I'm surprised that this isn't like higher in the list or hasn't been on the bull market list before. Like,
Agreed.
have people not been paying attention to the GTO or the nameplate? Like,
I think they have, but they've more been drawn to the bigger bore GTOs, and from what I understand, this being the earlier years of the GTO, it didn't
Sure.
have anything. I believe it had like a 389, I believe, and then up to a 400 eventually, and then obviously now GTOs past that are legendary. But
Sure.
these 2 years specifically.
Yeah, when you get
don't
up
hear
towards
it
the
done.
judges, I understand where people,
Right.
and that was kind of also people enjoyed the caricature. You know, the judge had big sticker and vinyl packs and bright colors, right? It was a completely kind of different car. Whereas the 67s and 66s were, I guess, a little bit more not mundane, but they were a little bit more reserved in their looks. Because again, GTO started off as like an option package that you could get on, I think it was the not the Tempest.
I believe it was a Tempest, actually.
Yeah, I thought it was the Tempest.
No, they're gonna correct us on the
Yep.
Hold on,
the
I'm looking at
comments.
Midwest Motoring, your source for the
your-
most accurate
Tempest.
automotive information.
Was it the Tempest?
It was
All right,
Tempest.
see, I was right. Yeah, your automotive authority is what I'd say, right? No,
We've never been wrong.
We've never
about
been stumped,
anything
dude, not
on this
once.
Podcast.
no one's ever questioned us ever.
Me especially.
We know every single model of every car ever made,
God.
just in case you were curious.
We
But-
are infallible.
Yeah, you're right. Like with the GTO, it's interesting seeing that the convertible is the one that that's the one that's sought after of this era. Like a lot of times it's going to be the big sports, but like the convertible is really the one that people are looking for. And Alex, you were right. It's a 389 tri-power 4-speed is the top best of the best of this generation. So
The GTO started the muscle car era.
100%.
It was the car that broke, through that barrier of no one is going to go racing. It was like, nope, we're going to slap a big motor in this thing and see how it does. And people absolutely ate that car up. So that's why I was always surprised when they weren't getting as much love and people were like, oh, Pontiacs? Oh, yeah, Pontiacs don't, they overheat. They've got heating problems and, cooling problems. And it's like, well, the Mustangs had problems. The Chevelles were horrible, in some ways, but people still love them. So it's always crazy to think that even when it was the marquee first muscle car, it really never caught on. And I think that also had to do with it was a big car and it was more of a like dad's car, It wasn't the Mustang was a pony car. It was when sex became a thing, right? When you could make an affordable car for, the 60s and 70s of the kids of the era. The 18-year-olds were, dressing different. They were going against what their parents. They wanted to put big motors in cars, go racing, right? And that's when the pony cars became a thing. The Mustang, the Camaro, that's where they flocked to. They didn't want the big, heavy, muscle cars anymore. So
Yeah, they didn't want the Impala. They didn't want the Galaxy. They didn't want those ones. They wanted the pony car, the Camaro, the Mustang, those kind of cars that lightweight, big, maybe not necessarily the biggest engine, but
Loud.
still, loud,
Yeah.
fun car to drive. And, they really held up. I think the thing that really catches my eye on these GTOs, and I really want to ask the question here is, why don't we build cars like this with that stacked headlight? That is such a good look for those cars.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, don't get me into a headlight rant. I'll be ranting for hours on just stupid headlights.
Tune in next week
Yeah,
to
well,
the
we-
Midwest Motoring Podcast.
Hyundai
where-
Tucson.
I actually did a podcast episode on headlights, and there is a reason why in the United States we don't get good headlights. Like Porsche has their X Matrix LEDs, and BMW has their laser headlights, but like the United States gets a like dumbed down version. In the like UK, their LED arrays that Audi was putting out was smart enough to see a pedestrian and turn that light off, so you're not blinding the pedestrian. And then it would see big, like you could have your brights on and it would move the bright lights around cars so you weren't blinding other motorists.
Pretty incredible.
But in the United States, no. Our federal guidelines say a headlight is two lights, a high beam and a low beam. And that's after 1974 when they made that correction to it.
And now we have to do daytime running, which also can't be running with certain things on, and it's just they make it so much less accessible
Thanks, Ralph Nader.
to make something cool. It just
I mean, that's so. Yes, the reason why we don't have headlights like that anymore, James, is because the government says you can't have nice things.
I'm sorry.
I'm on a rant now. That's the best level of podcasting we've got. So the Pontiac GTO, price when new, and now granted this was devoid of some options, as the owner of the car in the magazine says, is like everything was options, even blinkers were options, was $3,700. Not too bad. Now they're valued at a number 2 value at about $100,000. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. And guess who really wants them? The boomers.
Of course.
Well, the other thing that's cool about the cars like this is like some of those options, because everything was optioned, are worth a lot of money. So even the $110,000 or $100,000, that's not even including some of these rare options that not everyone got. Because if you see all these different line items, chances are you're probably not going to be like, I want everything.
The other thing is like to find one in good condition that's not, destroyed, rusted, or
A clone.
Yeah.
So good luck out there on that one. Alex, what do we got next on the list?
Yeah, so next up is the 92 to 95 Porsche 968. Not one that you typically hear about a lot. Again,
It's a front engine Porsche.
Front-engine Porsche, and then for me personally, if I'm thinking front-end Porsches, I'm thinking
944,
924, 928, 944, but you don't really ever think about the 968. And this is the newest of all of those, and also the nicest, of course. But it's a cool looking car. I think it really, and I've always really liked the look of the front end Porsches.
Wasn't this
944s and go ahead.
Wasn't this the car in Scarface? Didn't he buy a front engine Porsche like this? Was it the 968?
It's one of these. It's one of the four.
I can't
remember. I believe this would be it. Yeah. But I think these are sweet. I've always really liked the look of them. Say what you want about the 4-cylinder, but people like them, and they apparently handle really well. Personally, I haven't driven one, unfortunately, but they're sweet. I think this is a really interesting addition, again, because you just don't hear about them. I don't see them for sale that often. It's just kind of one of those more obscure Porsches, especially for the front engine ones.
Yeah, it's kind of the successor to like the 944, and the 944 was, pretty big hit, I'd say. Lots of people like them. They're still pretty popular, still fairly affordable cars you can get out and have some fun in. And this being the successor with a little bit more updated styling for the 90s and things like that.
The performance is there. In the article, from the Hagerty article, the Bull Market Review, it says that it did 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds from a 4-cylinder.
A 3-liter 4-cylinder.
That's pretty good for 92.
Yeah.
That's fantastic for a little 4-cylinder.
That's definitely pretty quick.
6,200 RPM, and that's not even turbocharged, right? Vario cam. Porsche's Vario cam.
Porsche VTEC.
Yep. Well, I mean, before VTEC, right?
P-Tech, perhaps?
P-Tech.
P-Tech.
Oh, wow.
So if you had to choose, which would you choose, a 944 or a 968?
Oh,
or
I
a
definitely
928?
I do 944.
I agree.
day.
I think 944 is easily the best looking.
I like the flat lines.
Yeah.
Like very angled, very non-Porsche, but at the same time has its own charm to it.
944 Turbo Cup is...
With the boxy flares. Oh, yeah. Looks
That's
so good.
I love that. That would be the one I'd go for. Now, I do enjoy a good set of pop-up headlights, but these, it's Porsche pop-up headlights. If those go bad, yikes.
I thought we weren't talking about headlights anymore.
This is good headlight talk. So price when new, back when these came out in the 90s, it was $39,000. That's pretty pricey.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be curious to know what the 911 of that era was, MSRP wise, because I would assume this is cheaper, but I don't know how much cheaper.
We'll have to. The world will never know. It's not like we have smart devices.
We don't have
There's
smartphones.
there's no way to find that out.
We have no supercomputers in our laps. But I do know that the value on these are still pretty. I guess I shouldn't say soft, because it's a car that when you bought it new was $39,000. You probably could have bought these 4 years ago for pittance, and now they're up to $38,000 to $51,000. That's a huge spread.
Yeah.
For a value 2 car, $51,000 for one of these now.
Well, I think what's important is we're past the point of you're making profit now. If you were to buy one new and you were to hold on to it, you're now in profit margin.
I think
for a number 2, which is like, that's where you want to be.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it looks as though, I mean, according to the article, it's the fastest appreciating Porsche coupes so far. And like the 90 to 94 C2 and C4, you're looking closer to $90,000 to even $100,000 for one of these. Whereas these are, right around the $50,000 mark. So if you are looking to get a Porsche, but not a 911, it's a value sell for sure.
And I did just look it up. The 911 of that era started at about 59, so about 20 grand more.
That was back in the 90s too.
Yeah. So
that's not a small amount of money. That's a lot.
Yeah, when you're talking about 150% for the price. So yeah, I mean it really I don't think they sold as many of them as they probably would have liked.
Mm-hmm.
But that helps the collectability nowadays. When
for sure.
Yeah,
not many
and
left.
The fact that it is kind of one of those cars that it's you either like it or you don't. It's kind of ugly, I think. But that means some people are really going to. Yeah, it's an acquired taste. Some people are going to really appreciate it. Some people are going to look at it and go, "What is that?"
It's definitely one of those cars where you just got to have just the right angle. You just have the perfect angle on this car. It's like, oh, that's a really
Speaking
cool car.
of angles, the next one on the list is full of angles. Right angles.
Lots of right angles.
Lots of
Lots
angles.
of square. We're talking the 83 to 97 Land Rover Defender.
Those things are super cool.
Awesome.
I mean, I was listening to some old Top Gear the other day, and I think I forget who it was quoting it, but they were like, it is one of the cars that about 60% of the world's population sees that as the very first car they've ever seen. Because it's traveled to remote parts of the world where they've never, ever seen a car. And so to see a Land Rover Defender, that's the first thing they see as an automobile.
Wow,
60%.
Pretty interesting.
That is interesting to think
Do
about.
not quote me on that, and do not ask me to verify that statistic. It came from Top Gear.
I will be doing both later.
75% of statistics are made up, right? Or something. What's that?
60% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, super capable off-roader, super popular. I mean, as you mentioned, this thing can go places that most other vehicles can't, and has done so with, really high rate of success. And they're just super popular, especially amongst like the off-roading scene, and even people who just want to get a cool old British car. I mean, they're super fun and super cool looking cars.
It's a truck, sir.
Whatever.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, with the Defender making a re-release within the past year or so, prices of these are just going to keep continuing to go up. We saw the same thing with the Bronco. We've seen a lot of these vehicles, when they're reintroduced after a long hiatus, the values of the originals are going up. But the thing I really like about this one, as opposed to the modern, is these aren't luxury cars. Like, this was not built to be a luxury off-road car. This is a fully capable rag top. A lot of times they had multiple different top options. These are,
I mean, they were built from the military.
Yeah, these are legitimately stripped down, can go anywhere utility vehicles.
They are, I mean, if you see them, they are rugged. They are built like tanks, and they're supposed to be easy to fix. I mean, granted, it is a British British motor, so like it's not going to be that easy. But the idea of when they were created was that they would be, in fact, fairly easy to repair and to fix because farmers and military people were using them. But they just have an iconic look, and just like the Broncos and the Scouts, there's a ton of aftermarket love and attention for these things. You can go absolutely buck wild on these things and buy a $300,000 retro mod Defender. It's pretty dang cool. For a stock one, not modified, they started about 14,500 British pounds, which is about $27,000, and now we're seeing them go for about $61,000 to $77,000.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's just how rare these are in the States compared to some other vehicles that are, similar quality, similar capability. This article says they made 2 million of them, but pretty rare vehicle in the U.S. They definitely did not bring that many here, and I think the price reflects that because
We talked about the reason why of the chicken tax.
Oh yeah,
That's correct.
That's why we didn't have a lot of import vehicles like trucks and things like that. It's a chicken tax.
And the most valuable of all these, of course, is going to be North American spec ones. But the Euro spec ones are definitely gaining popularity because they're going to be a little easier to get.
Alex try to
I'm trying to salvage
What
this.
a
All right,
pro,
don't
man.
stop
Good,
me.
Good job, Alex. Let's all.
I'm staring at James making
Well,
faces.
To go along with your point with the Euro spec ones, I'm just going to read a little excerpt here that I think is hilarious. It says, the makers of sports and luxury cars for the first 80 years of the auto industry could not possibly have imagined how folks today will drop coin for an old Land Rover. In fact, the Brits can't even imagine it, which is why you can still buy Land Rovers relatively inexpensively in the UK, as long as you don't mind right-hand steering and the persistent aroma of wet sheepdog. Once these vehicles cross the Atlantic, however, they become exotic, and there's an urban glamour here to driving a rattling, clomping, barely upholstered utility truck that probably spent its first year slaloming around cow patties in Upper Bruntingthorpe.
That's a good word.
Yeah, I like that.
Bruntingthorpe.
It's just the most British description of the car ever, and it's true. I mean, they don't really realize why Americans really like these cars because they're everywhere.
They're just like a work truck to them.
Exactly.
This is nothing. This is like.
Oh, it's like the F-150 to us.
Right.
You can go out and buy a cheap.
Well, yeah, and then you see
want-
people in like the Middle East or anywhere else, F-150 or like a truck is like, oh, that's super cool, or
Yeah.
a Mustang, and it's
Any
like
pickup. They don't get pickups.
even like
anywhere else.
Mustangs
They get
and Corvettes,
Toyotas.
like it's
Yeah.
a big deal to have one of those overseas,
Mhm.
and you don't see them very often. It's the same thing.
I keep wanting to compare these to Broncos, but that makes it's not really a 1-to-1 because they're expensive here too. It's not like they're less expensive here and the Europeans go nuts for them, but it's that kind of ethos, if you will. It's the boxy, utilitarian work truck. People just love the boxy, go anywhere look today. Myself included. I think they're great, and you still get that a little bit with the design of the new Defender and Bronco.
Yeah, people love the off-road capability in like a Jeep or a Bronco. Definitely need it to go to the mall, right?
Or
Like,
over some leaves.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
that's the funny thing about, especially in the U.S., is like most of the drivers of these cars are not using them for their off-road capability. It's, I want to look rugged. I want to present myself as a tough, I got this cool, like, really, really capable car, and it's just
Yeah.
the look. It's really nothing other than the community or the look around a Jeep or a Bronco or whatever
Right.
it is. That there's probably I'm going to make up a statistic here, but 15% of people are actually using their Broncos or their Jeeps to off-road.
Yeah, they're all listening right now, and we know you actually use it. I'm talking to you, person in your Jeep, cruising through the
Spending-
backwoods,
Colorado.
Spending
listening
80
to
grand
the
on a
Midwest Motoring Podcast. Thank you. We know that you do use your Jeep as a Jeep, and we appreciate it. But you know as well as I do that the majority of Jeep owners don't.
Yeah. I think people just really like the idea that they could go anywhere if they wanted to, even though they never will, ever.
It's the bug out vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. And, I remember reading in the article, even the guy who owns the one they featured admitted he barely ever takes it off-road. So
I think in the testing that we did, Larry Webster was taking it off-road more than the guy ever did.
And that's not shocking, which is kind of weird.
It's just what people like. It's that, rugged, like you guys said, masculine,
Simple.
appearance. Yeah.
Boxy, simple.
Even though they're hard to work on and parts are a pain in the butt to find, and
Well, also
drop a small block
you
Chevy
see-
in it and you'll be all right.
The other thing you see is people use them more as like summer cruiser cars because you can
Get ice
take
cream.
off the
Martha's
the rag
Vineyard.
top. You can take off. It's basically
winery.
it's basically a beach cruiser. You can take off and
Yeah.
make it essentially a convertible, and that's like super
Oh, you
appealing
probably
to
see a
other
ton
people.
of these in the Hamptons.
Yeah, and
Oh,
in the Hamptons.
Well, what's that noise?
The Hamptons for sure. Not quite Myrtle Beach. I think Myrtle Beach is more.
No,
that's Jeep
more,
Wrangler.
That's more my speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
F-250.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not even the Wrangler. That's the Cherokee, the old box Cherokee.
Yeah.
Liberty. It's the Jeep Liberty.
Oh, even worse. So what's next on the list, James?
All right. So next we're getting into something I enjoyed seeing. We've got 79 to 85 Mazda RX-7.
Wankle.
Yeah, good
I love
little
that word.
flying Dorito.
Yes.
Wankle.
Yeah, I love seeing these things. I mean, they're just, for some reason, I can't explain it, but RX-7s have always had a special place in my heart. Every generation. I think they're just really cool, unique cars. They really just stuck to that rotary engine. Whatever that meant, whatever the cost was, maintenance troubles and all that, be damned. But it's
Shout out to Jason Camisa doing a Hagerty video on these. Not on this era, but he did do a video on the RX-7, especially the FD. And I agree with him. It's why we can't have nice things, right? Is Mazda went above and beyond to create something great, and people liked it, but they didn't like it enough. So once again,
To buy 'em,
you, the listener, and the people who didn't buy these are the reason why we can't have nice things, as he put it in his video. Very good. Go check it out. Icons at Hagerty.com and on their website or their YouTube channel. But these are super cool. Like the Wankle, I didn't really consider it and think of it this way, but it is like a very simple internal combustion engine, right? Like it has far less moving parts than a piston-driven internal combustion. And Mazda was the one that really perfected it and figured out, hey, you need carbon apex seals to make these things work.
Yeah, and I mean, they're really high revving engines. You can get really good power out of a really small power plant, and they just sound really cool. Such a unique tone, kind of like Subaru Boxster engine or something like that. You know it when you hear it. It's definitely very identifiable.
It's interesting to note, though, that like this first generation of RX-7 really did well and gave us really the momentum to get, I think, 2 more generations of the RX-7, right?
Yeah, and then the RX-8, but correct.
We don't talk about that.
We
bastard
don't talk
trade.
about no.
What do you mean? Come on, guys.
So they started off at about $10,600 back, when they first came out. Now good ones go for up to like $27,000. That's pretty good investment right there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and this would be a good one.
Yeah, and I think that something that's interesting that I keep seeing is that the Japanese market for cars like this, there is value in a lot of Japanese cars, but there's a car coming up on our R34 that I think it was the last one, or it's the only one left of a certain type, and it's expected to be the first
$400.
Yeah, that one. It's expected to be the first Japanese car sold above $2 million.
I believe it.
Yeah, but think about that though. A Japanese car selling for $2 million for the first
From the
time
90s.
ever.
Well, you have to think
it's
about
a decorated 400R, and
you have to think about who is buying these cars, right? And the nice thing that the bull market review does go over is like what generations are really looking at these cars. And of all the cars that we've mentioned previously in this list, like the baby boomers, Gen X's, millennials, like each one has had a spike of what they liked and who was buying these. This one is kind of a really standard bell curve, right? Like boomers like them, Gen X really like them, and even millennials kind of like this car, right? And so that means that it's going to do well. Here's a weird thing. I don't like the first gen RX-7. I think it's too small, it's too smooth. I like the later 80s, like 86 to 92 RX-7 more than this one, but I do enjoy the 93 to 95 RX-7 the most, the FD.
I will agree that this one, the FB, is probably my least favorite looking, although I still think it looks great.
Oh, it's still great, yeah. Pop-up headlights.
I love these things, man. I'm excited and sad it made the list because now it just means I'm getting farther and farther away from getting one myself.
They're getting more and more expensive.
So my dad actually had one of these. He had
These
a
are
red
so
one.
Oh, cool.
And this was one of the cars out of the 2 cars he's ever owned in his life that he said he let get away. He had a 58 F100 that he wishes he still had. Had a chance to buy one back years ago, but didn't end up working out. But this is the other car. He had a red, just out of college. He was like, I'm going to do something irresponsible. I'm going to buy an RX-7. And he wishes he still had that car.
And I wish I could do that.
Yeah, it was something that he really enjoyed for a long time, and he wishes he had a couple of his cars.
It's those memories, man. It's you start treating these as time capsules back into your youth, and that's why people love nostalgia. And it's interesting to note, like, this type of vehicle, it's bypassing generations at the moment, which is why it's selling so well. Obviously, you have like the newer and the latest version of the RX-7 is selling like hotcakes, but this one is also up there, and Hagerty believes that it's going to be another big jumper here soon. And I think the Japanese domestic market is doing that all over the place. Like they're now importing R33s, and they're at like $60,000.
A couple years away from R34s being legal.
And I mean, people are paying upwards of $100,000 for those right now. R34s in the gray market.
R34s, yeah. I mean, we're seeing some of them even going close to 500,000.
Yeah. I think I looked on an auction site. They had like all the most special versions of all these awesome JDM cars, and they had an R34 V-Spec Nürburgring edition up for over $300,000, over $350,000.
Wow.
So, and it will sell for that.
Sure.
I'm not going to be surprised at all.
For me, one of my favorite cars is the R33 LM because it never raced. So Nissan went out and built this Le Mans capable R33 that I don't think ever really raced or really got anywhere. Didn't go to Le Mans. I think it did some other races, but it's just a really cool looking.
Looks so good.
Yeah.
That sounds like Nissan.
Yeah. So the next car on this list is a 1963 to 67 Mercedes-Benz Sl230. These things are cool little cars. I mean, it's no gull wing, but I've seen a bunch of these recently, and they're just impressively built cars for the era.
And you say it's no gull wing, which is true, but it's got some of the same kind of styling. If you like the way the gull wing looks, it's, maybe from 100 feet, you'd think it was a gull wing coming up at you. Yeah. And it's just a cool looking little, like, kind of roadster car, and it's a really cool car. I love seeing this era of Mercedes.
Well, I think especially, like, the front end really, really looks a lot like not the gull wing, but the Roadster, the 300 SL Roadster. A lot of the front headlights and the front shape is like essentially unchanged from that vehicle. Obviously, the roof line and some stuff have been changed to make it more less sporty and more of a cruiser. But yeah, absolutely, it's definitely still a classy car. You're not going to see someone rolling up in that and being like, "Oh, that's not a classy car."
And on that topic, this car to me just oozes class. I mean, it just looks so nice. It's not over the top. It's got still some of that boxy flares that people would like, and they're just extremely well made. Mercedes of this era were, like, everyone says it, but they were built like bank vaults. I mean, they just would not stop. And I think these look great. It's
they definitely
really
leaked oil like sieves, though.
Well,
but
build quality.
That's neither here nor there, And you say this oozes class. Do you think this is like Grey Poupon level or
100%?
Yeah,
maybe even slightly higher.
I don't think it's. I think it's class, like sexy class, not like high, like
not hoity-toity.
Like you'd think a lady in a wonderful gown wouldn't get out of this. A woman in a sexy mini skirt and like with a shawl on and things like that. That's who would be using this.
I could see James Bond driving one of these in an alternate universe, like that kind of. Am I wrong?
Like gentlemanly,
maybe
classy.
Jane Bond. Perhaps.
Jane Bond.
You think so that it seems to be coming. Is this more of a feminine car?
No, I don't think so. But I do think of it as a beautiful car.
Yeah.
That to me oozes, and maybe it's because when I've seen them, I've always seen them in convertibles, and I would. To me, that speaks more to a feminine kind of thing. Not that. Because this isn't a small roadster, like this isn't a British roadster. Now they are pretty small and they're fast, but it's one of those things where I don't know. I just when I see these, I think class and I think beauty versus seeing masculinity and power, right? And I don't. It's kind of like the the Ford Thunderbird to me, where it's like when I get in a Ford Thunderbird, I just want to drive it, but I don't have to go fast. I just want to enjoy the experience of being out, and that's what I get from this car.
I think the article says it perfectly. It's more of a cruiser than a sports car.
Sure.
This is more of something that you're just going to go, drive down some beautiful road somewhere. You're not going down that road at 100 miles an hour. It's not the tail of the dragon car. This is the Pacific Coast Highway car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And I mean, that says it really, really well. I think, interestingly enough, these cars cost a pretty high amount back in the day, $7,500. And now they're valued up to $108,000. That's insane.
Yeah, and we're back to, you're talking about the bell curve of who's buying these cars. We're back to the boomers and Gen X making up almost 80% of the people who, really have these vehicles and are looking to get a quote or something from Hagerty. So, yeah, I mean, we're starting to get to, with that RX-7, we were starting to get to some of the younger generations, but we're kind of back to the higher dollar and people having the kind of money to have a $100,000 car.
Speaking of people who have money to buy cars, Jess, what's next on the list?
Oh, it is the most amazing class of vehicle that is out there. It is a Volvo 245. The one that pictured is actually the Estate.
The Estate wagon.
And it was a turbo. So this is a fairly well...
Insert turbo noises here.
Fairly well done, performance Volvo from 1975 to 93. And we were talking before the episode started about kind of the Volvo wagons. And me personally, I would love to have a Volvo wagon. One of the newer ones, the 850 T5R. But this led the way. This was kind of like the precursor to that vehicle. Nobody really thought you should take a big ol' station wagon and put a turbo. It's an inline 5, correct?
This one is a 4-cylinder. So the one in the magazine had a 2-liter 4-cylinder with Bosch mechanical fuel injection, which that was a pretty hefty thing for the Porsche crowd to have mechanical fuel injection. So for this to also have mechanical fuel injection, this thing's got to sound pretty dang cool.
Yeah, and I mean, it says it output 127 horsepower, and later with an intercooler, 162 horsepower, which, for the day, that's good power. And especially on a wagon that you can put a snowboard and golf clubs and
Children.
Multiple people in.
Dogs.
That's almost sports car level performance to a certain point. But
which is why the 850 was such a really cool, newer Volvo wagon. But yeah, I mean, I think people are really going after this kind of unique, boxy, 80s aesthetic. And this one kind of fits in line with that as well. It's just a big old box, but it's cool. And the fact that a Volvo has turbo on it just sounds pretty dang cool.
Yeah, we saw one yesterday. Was it on Cars and Bids, or was it Bring a Trailer, the right-hand drive, the JDM version of this? And it's I have no idea why, but I really want that car.
Yeah, it's one of those cars that you're like, I know this shouldn't exist. It doesn't make much sense to exist. But at the end of the day, for an enthusiast, this is the ultimate sleeper, if you know, enthusiast car. And it's the same reason why I love the RS6 Avant and the E63 wagon. It's very much the common non-car person's going to look at that and be like, okay, there doesn't matter. It's just a station wagon. But for car people, they're like, oh man, look at that. That's awesome. And I love that kind of car that really only true enthusiasts are going to see it and know what it actually is.
The interesting thing we've been talking about who's been buying these, but once again, just about everybody, millennials, Gen X's, and boomers, even post-millennials. I don't know. Is that post-millennials?
TikTok?
Post Malone? Yeah, sunflowers.
Sunflowers? Jesus.
Sunflowers?
But they, everyone is liking this car. Everyone's around 20 to 30%, and that means that they're going to be a popular car across spectrums of people, which means they're going to sell well. These started at about $13,500, and right now you can still buy them for $2,100. Most of these are probably still one owner. Like the same owner is probably owned it the entire time.
Grandma's had it since new, and it's got 40,000 miles on it.
70,000 miles at most.
That's called investing, kids. No, I'm just kidding. No cars are investments. I don't know about this next one. I'm sure that there's a set of people out there that enjoy them. I'm not one. I mean, I guess I can't really talk too much. I've been talking about the Ford Thunderbird, and I'm a big Squarebird fan, so not the small ones. But this is 1965 to 1970 Cadillac Deville.
Wait, you're not into this? I thought I skipped a car or something for a second. This is beautiful, man.
Oh, God, it's so huge.
Oh, exactly. Look how gorgeous this car is. Like, it's so big.
The reason I'm not a huge fan is I don't want to have to build an additional garage.
Yeah, my truck doesn't fit in my garage. This absolutely won't fit.
Yeah, and then you got to pay the post office man because it's got its own zip code. Like, bring on the jokes. But there's just something to me about these old '60s Cadillacs that are 150 feet long. That I don't know. I've always been drawn to them, even as a Ford guy. Just there's something so classy and so fun about these Cadillacs.
How old are you?
I don't know. I'm 90 roughly, I think.
Hey, James, what kind of headlights does this one have?
Oh, does this have? Yeah, it's got the stacked headlights that I really like.
They stole them from Pontiac.
Cars with stacked headlights anymore.
Technically, all Cadillacs have stacked headlights now. They're just little tiny LEDs.
Yeah, and they're just
in the bumper.
Dumber.
They're stupid.
It's stupid. I don't like them.
The interesting thing is these were $5,600 when they were new. I mean, that's pretty high money for back in the 60s, right?
Yeah, I mean, this was the
Malaise era.
But this is back when you would see the big ballers rolling around in the big Cadillac.
Yeah,
this is the sedan Deville.
Yeah,
exactly. This is the car your grandpa's doctor had. Like 100%. This is the car your grandpa's doctor took his wife to town. Park it out front, kid. We're getting the steak. Like, this is that car.
We're getting the steak. They will be comfortable and they will be fun to take people around in. And I think that if you are the kind of person that wants to collect a car that has presence, this car has absolute presence. And yeah, I mean, I understand why some people like them. They're just literally a land yacht. But right now, they're not too expensive. $38,000 for a really, really, really nice one. That's not too bad. You know, we were talking about the Defender and about things that can go off-road. And these were around when I was a kid. And I still don't want one. But apparently a lot of people out there want them.
You've been wrong twice in a row now.
1985 to 95 Suzuki Samurai. Are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah.
It's a death trap.
What are you talking about? Why don't you want one of these?
You know how many kids in my high school died because of these?
How many?
Like one.
That's
more than
it's
there
more
should
than not.
be.
Yeah.
But
I mean, here's what you do with this.
Yeah, where are you gonna go?
Here's what you do with this. You go out, you get your little Suzuki Samurai, you get a nice little 3-inch lift kit, maybe some 33s or 35s, whatever's gonna fit. Put a bumper on it, put a winch on it.
Are we making a monster Samurai?
Oh yeah, we are. These things are gonna be like super capable off-roaders, and that's what people love about them. They're small, they're lightweight. You can easily modify these things to be highly, highly capable off-road vehicles.
And for not that much money up until now. It's one of those things where we for a while, these were pretty affordable, but it seems that these are starting to have their day in the collector market and people are starting to buy them. But
of all the cars that we recently talked about, though, this article talks a lot about the Samurai. Like, they have a lot of opinions about these cars. And I think I'm a little too harsh on them. They are cool little off-roaders. I do think that for my money, some of the available off-roaders from Japan right now, like the K cars and like some of the imports that you can get now, are cooler than these. But they're, I mean...
Hey, I mean, they're cooler, but...
He's trying so hard to like
them. I appreciate you trying, but they are cooler, but they're less attainable. Those K cars are hard to find in good condition unless you're going to import it yourself, and then you never know what you're going to get. These were sold in the States. They're more readily available.
Very true.
It's something that, if you've got a little bit of money, you've got a little project or something like that, I think this is a solid choice.
For $14,000, you think it's a solid choice?
I mean, that's a number 2. I mean, I think you could probably find one of these for $3,500, $4,000 on Craigslist.
That wouldn't run.
Do people still use Craigslist?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I think it
Absolutely they
exists.
do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the people who
I'll
are
look at
buying, the ones that buy this probably do. It's all boomers.
Oh, 100%.
Gen X's.
Well,
Yeah.
No, not this one.
I don't know though.
Gen X's and boomers are pretty dang high.
Take a look at the stat though. This is pretty crazy. Like, it says that the share of the quotes that we that are seen by these 70% are Gen X or younger.
Who said that?
It's right here. Share of quotes Gen X and younger. 70% for the Suzuki Samurai, where standard quote distribution is 57% of all of our enthusiasts.
You're wrong.
vehicles.
It's wrong. It's wrong. It's got to be wrong.
You know what
So,
this car does?
These
scream,
are
though?
younger people buying these cars, just not you.
The
because you
youth
don't
is
like
ruining this world.
They are though, right?
That was really
we
bad.
totally are.
Just need to get
The
a
youth,
couple
do you think?
manuals.
These stupid youths.
I have a feeling, because this is not like, I feel like most people our age don't know that much about this car. Because,
Oh, I mean, absolutely.
all right, never mind.
No,
I'll tell
I'm
you.
agreeing with you.
Okay, I thought you were saying.
I'm
oh, no,
agreeing
no.
with you. No.
Okay.
Screw you. All of you are wrong. This car. No, I agree.
But I think, honestly, more than anything, they're just cute, man. They're just tiny little cars. And I think that's why
you're
people
gonna
want
you're
them.
gonna get a bunch of samurai people all mad.
I think that's why people like them. I don't know that people like think that
It's a little
they're
baby
super
car.
rugged. They again
I'm
have
not-
a very boxy utilitarian feel.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm gonna go and Baja race one of these, but
No.
like they're still capable.
Yeah,
Can you at least write a will before you do that?
I actually did just do that this week. Fun fact.
Fun fact. Fun fact. It's just I'm not having the light bulb moment with this, and it just doesn't electrify me.
Oh, that's a good segue.
Whoa! Wow!
And it's
He
dead.
is on his game.
Wow, that was good.
James, what do you want to go into with electricity?
I think this one's probably going to be the one that ends up being the most controversial
Certainly
vehicle
divisive.
on this list. And I've already seen some of the comments on
To the
some of
moon.
posts. Yeah, to the moon. 2008 to 2012 Tesla Roadster. I think this is the first electric vehicle on this list.
Can I give my opinion on this? It is my podcast.
We'll allow it.
We'll either allow it or we won't be back next week.
Yeah, exactly.
Tune in next week, and there's two
And
new
there's
guest
going to be
hosts.
Matt.
Anyone who hates this car being on this list doesn't understand, or doesn't have freaking eyes. What do you see everywhere you go right now? Teslas. They're everywhere. And what started that was this thing. Everyone in Hollywood wanted one. Anyone who was anyone in society wanted a Tesla Roadster because it was the first fun car that was electric that just set the world on fire. They weren't great. They ran out of juice pretty dang quick, but they were also not slow, right? So they were a fun electric car when everything up to that point had been just horrible.
You're going to do my Fisker Karma like that?
Oh my God, your Fisker Karma.
Oh, man.
Those are a travesty.
The Karma,
like wow.
The Karma came after the Roadster, though.
Was it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The guy. So
check.
the Fisker Karma came after this Roadster because the guy who created the Karma created it after the Model S was created. He built the Model S. Yeah. And then he went out and did the Fisker Karma, and designed the Fisker Karma.
Debuted in 2008. Looks like the same year. But I could be wrong.
2012.
Production for the Karma was 2011, 2012.
So
Okay,
this came out
so-
in
okay,
2008.
I don't
Debuted-
think it was
debuted
past
at
the
the-
Model S, though. The Model S was...
Yeah, okay. It debuted at a North American International Auto Show in 08. Actually came to production 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know what you're saying because like this is the car. It's going to get a lot of hate from the people that give the same amount of hate to every electric car.
Yeah.
They're not going to buy them. They're not here for it, and that's fine. But they have a place, and I think that this is going to be one of those ones that 10 years in the future, these are going to be super fun to see at car shows.
Sure.
And the money is just going to be there on
Well,
these.
it's if they can make it to the car shows because their
Yes.
batteries will be dead by that point.
That's true. That's true.
But this is the ultimate okay boomer car because if you look at the who's buying it, 18% are boomers, 44% are Gen X's, 36% are millennials. So that's why who are contemplating and complaining on the post of this is like, this isn't a real car. This isn't a car. Is the people who are used to seeing vintage cars, people who are used to seeing American muscle cars on the list, not seeing Suzuki Samurais, not seeing Teslas on this list. But I hate to break it to you, this is an American car that set the world on fire with what it could do, and it set a precedent for what EVs should be and what they could be, right? It was a fun EV.
Well, I think you hit it there like really well when you're talking about this is history. This vehicle is,
whether you like it or not.
Yeah, this vehicle is historically significant in the world of the way that vehicles are headed. It's going to be the same thing that we're seeing with vintage turbo vehicles. Some of the first turbo vehicles are unbelievably valuable. Or, I mean, you name it, any new
Quattro Audis.
Exactly. Any new technology.
Any new technology that revolutionizes an industry is going to be coveted. And this is, at this point, revolutionizing the industry. We're seeing pretty much every major manufacturer all go towards EVs. And these are just going to keep going up.
Yeah, sometimes not by choice, admittedly. There are a lot of places that are moving away from internal combustion engines, and we don't want to get into that conversation. I mean, that's just not what we're here for. But, you know, it is the way of the future, and I think this one having the underpinnings of Lotus in an electric car, the performance you get out of an electric vehicle is hands down, you can't argue that 0 to 60, quarter mile, all that is better with an electric car. It's just fact. And the fact that they made this one on a Lotus chassis, that's really cool.
Yeah, a small convertible. I mean, it is a sports car. It very much, they could have chosen to go with the Model S first or something that was more mainstream or had more mass appeal. But they're like, no, we're going to go with a 2-seat sports car that's a convertible top.
Name another 2008 car that could do 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds.
Under 100,000.
You're
talking, if I don't know the numbers, but you're talking McLaren, Ferrari,
Bugatti.
Yeah, you're talking exotics. I mean, there was nothing American muscle
Everything
that was making that
costs
was that.
$250,000 and higher to be even close to that ballpark of performance figures.
I mean, you had the Viper, you had high-end Corvettes were doing it, but I don't know if they're 0 to 60s were 3.9. I think they were low 4s. But like everything, we've been wrong before. But you hit the nail on the head too. I mean, these things weren't cheap though, and that was one of the, I think, the downsides is that starting out these were $130,000. You know, they're not like EVs now that you could get a Model 3 for $40,000 and blow a Lambo's doors off at the light.
Well, yeah, and just to give some context on that 0 to 60. Comparatively, 2012 Corvette did 0 to 60 in 4.2. So close. Tesla's still faster.
But this was a very first EV vehicle that was mainstream enough, right? Mm-hmm. So you did have Priuses, right? You had hybrids.
Well, that's totally different ball game.
But that's what people thought of when they thought of
EV
electric stuff.
Right. Well, people forget
it wasn't cool.
Yeah, people forget about the EV1. You know, who killed the electric car. If you haven't watched that, put your tinfoil hat, boys, and enjoy that one. But, you know, being the first really well-known and well-sold fully electric vehicle was a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, say what you want about it, but it seems like it is the future and they're here to stay. Maybe it's not going to be Tesla. That's the big front runner, of course. The more mainstream manufacturers are really starting to throw a lot of cash into the EV market.
Oh, that's a topic in and of itself.
So yeah, we'll definitely see. I personally don't know that Tesla is always going to be as big as they are currently. Once some of the bigger manufacturers start to catch up with them with production quality and Tesla's charging, all that stuff.
Sure. Tesla's got a leg up, I think, on a lot of them.
Certainly.
But for now.
Well, that wasn't even what Elon Musk wanted. Elon Musk, I mean, obviously he's been very successful with Tesla. But he didn't want to just become the biggest automaker in the world. He wanted to force other automakers to
change,
to get into the electric cars because he recognized that it was the way of the future.
he's always been someone that, at the cost to his own downfall at times, he's all about innovation and change. And I mean, we see it throughout his entire career. I mean, he self-sabotages himself on a daily basis if it means that there's going to be large-scale change or innovation, and he was really pushing other people for that. So, yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see. Who knows how long they'll be around? Who knows if they're going to be the big one, like you said, Alex? But, yeah, I mean, this car is history. This car is important, and I think it will have a place in the collector market for sure.
Yeah, and even if none of that was in the equation, they're really rare. They did not make many of these cars, and I've personally only seen probably 2 in my entire life.
I think I've seen one.
I saw 3 at one time at the Tesla dealership at Easton. I don't know how it happened.
It doesn't count if you go to the dealership.
No. It was 3 customer vehicles that all were at the dealership wanting to get photos of their cars together because it was a really rare car.
Yeah.
And they all got together, and I had to get pictures of it because I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever going to see this again.
Exactly, yeah.
And, I mean, even at that point, these were relatively new vehicles back when I saw these. And to see 3 at the same time was, like, mind-blowing.
Yeah, definitely. And if you haven't seen these in person, they obviously look quite like a Lotus.
But so does the Hennessy, you know.
Yeah.
It's the same concept. It's
right.
based off of a chassis that
it is
really
a
well.
legit Lotus chassis. And they apparently drive quite well because of that. But they're pretty cool. As far as EV goes, I think these are cool. For sure.
So suck it, Boomer. Well, I think that's the last vehicle on that list. Go check out Hagerty's article in their latest edition of their Drivers Club magazine, or go to their website and check it out at hagerty.com/media. They also had another article that we kind of talked about a little bit, and we've been talking about values, so I thought this was a pretty good one. Greg Ingold released an article on their media, or their Hagerty Insider page, about values and like what they've been seeing in like cars that are just soaring up in value. And to nobody's surprise, Porsche's up on the top of that list. Porsche Turbo S's of the 997 era have just been exploding in cost. They mentioned that all Japanese sports cars are really taking off. They still see a very strong American muscle market, right? And at the end of the article, Greg's basically like, look, right now everything is sky high, so everything is raising everybody else's costs, and it's just, as they say, rising tides raise all ships.
Yep.
So.
And for me personally, one thing that I've been excited about seeing, I personally am I'm pretty big into the JDM scene. I love Japanese cars. I always have. And to see some of these cars, especially later model cars, really produce the kind of numbers that there are, because some of these, especially obviously GTRs, are going crazy. But even things like Evos and STIs, there's a lot of really awesome JDM cars that are getting a lot of love right now. I think that has a lot to do with the generation that grew up with them, now have some money that can spend on them.
The generation that grew up watching Fast and Furious.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Initial D.
Yeah.
100%.
I was an Initial D fan.
Yeah, no, it's been really cool to see, and that's kind of part of this article.
I think. Do you guys think that the STI is going to be worth less in history than the Evos? I think so,
because the Evos they're gone now. Yeah. They stopped making them.
Well, not only that, the Evos didn't have cruise control. They were a lot. I mean, they were popular with the people who enjoyed tuning, but I think they were less popular with like more people. I'd like to see production numbers and sales numbers on them, but I don't think they were like Evos were as well liked by everybody as much as Subarus were liked.
They're more hardcore.
Well, I mean, you see the WRX, even the non-STI variant, all the time. It's just Subaru has that sort of appeal to everyone because of also all of their quality. I mean, everyone knows they last forever. That's the Subaru thing. It's like, oh, you have this car for generations.
Versus a Mitsubishi who's buying a Mitsubishi, like that's not really a
they're not known to be their quality.
Right.
I mean, everyone used to want one of the older Eclipses, the all-wheel drive Eclipse.
Oh yeah, like the 03 Eclipse, but yeah, absolutely.
But I think the other thing is that, interestingly enough, Subaru had like the Impreza then it had the Impreza WRX, and then the STI, right? It had like good, better, best. And then for Mitsubishi, it was you get the Lancer, you get the Lancer OZ, or you get the Evo, right? Or I guess there was also a Lancer Rally Sport.
The Rally Art or whatever.
Yeah, but that was not a performance car.
No,
it was
really.
just literally like a Toyota Corolla, not a Toyota
It was
Corolla, but
cosmetic mostly,
it was a cosmetic thing, like a TRD Corolla. It had no performance mods, maybe an exhaust and some OZ wheels, but the Evo was a true performance car, and I think that competed directly with the STI probably, not with the WRX.
Yeah, no, 100%. That was definitely, and that's always kind of something that was interesting, is obviously WRXs are going to be a little more common than STIs, but Mitsubishi didn't have anything directly comparable to the WRX. The Evo always went up against the STI because that was just the highest performance ones, and I think that probably had something to do with the sales numbers and the popularity, because Evos were definitely more hardcore. They had less creature comforts. Frankly, they're pretty cheap inside. They are not nice cars, but damn, are they good to drive.
I wanted an STI so bad when I was young, and my dad, he would get into the car and be like, there is nothing here. Like, the door is
all
hollow.
plastic,
It's all plastic. And he goes, no. So I got a GTO instead.
Okay.
Which wasn't bad.
Hey, I'll take that.
Yeah, not bad at all. I had to buy that one, though. Actually, my first car was a Dodge Durango, so that was a good,
cool,
fun little truck.
Quite an upgrade.
Was it half rust when you had it?
No, actually, ours was really, really nice. It didn't rust out until after I sold it.
Okay.
But
it did rust out.
Somebody, probably did.
It's a Dodge Durango.
Yeah,
the transmissions went a lot.
About 90% of those Durangos are all rusted out.
But like the article goes on to explain that Porsche turbos, late model air or water cooled turbos, are just sky high right now, and it's insane to see what the water cooled Porsches of the 996 generation and 997 generation are doing right now, including Boxsters and Caymans too. JDM stuff, like I can't wait to see some of the import JDM stuff come in, because you can even get Mark IV Supras, you can get RX-7s. Get an FD RX-7 from Japan. That would be sweet.
Yeah, and a lot of times those cars, the JDM versions, have special features, such as, I don't know if you guys are aware, but JDM market Supras, Mark IVs, have active aero.
What?
Yes, they have a little, it's not much, but it has a little like electronic splitter that comes out the front and a button in the interior. Obviously, U.S. Market cars do not have that. But it's just little things like that. And I love the Japanese quirkiness of it. They're just so cool to me. I mean, I think it's just, little things like that also up the value of the JDM market ones. Especially.
Late 90s, early 2000s JDM stuff, even if it's Japanese stuff here, like the Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4. Oh, I wanted one of those so bad. All-wheel steering. Like, that's
sweet.
That's stuff you see on high-end cars. That's stuff you're going to see on the new Hummer, right? It has the crab walk and stuff like that.
300ZX too.
Right. It was available back then, but nobody really adopted it. Why? Because it was complicated and they didn't think it would work. But nowadays, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. This big heavy thing with a 1,000,000-mile wheelbase, it can turn quicker. Yeah. Cool.
Well, they're also going to sell that for like $100,000.
Wow. And it is something you see on higher-end cars.
They're also going to put it on the new Silverado EV.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Well, that's going to be $100,000 too, but yeah.
I digress.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's technology like that is definitely more popular now. You see that a lot on big Mercedes. Any big body luxury
RS6
cars
Avant
all have it.
Has it? Like
Porsches have it.
They can't turn the back end with just one set of wheels. If they want to have performance and they want to also have a good on-track experience with these really long vehicles, that's something that you need. But.
Yeah.
James, you've been awfully quiet.
Hi.
You want to talk about American Muscle? Because nobody else does.
Oh, we can talk about American Muscle. We can talk about more. We can talk more about headlights. No, I mean, I think you guys are making good points. I think early 90s JDM, they had a lot of technology that was ahead of its time. I mean, we're talking about the all-wheel steering. I think there was even a Honda Prelude that you could get that in, if I'm not mistaken. It's something that's been around, and like there's just certain like quirkiness to some of those early Japanese vehicles that just makes them fun.
We always make fun of we don't make fun of it, but we laugh at like the old VTEC jokes, right? But it's like they put variable valve timing in a affordable 4-cylinder car. None of the American cars did that. None of them even came close to that technological advancement in their motors because they just didn't want to, right? And they thought it would be expensive.
Yeah, and it was hard to make work, and it's a very complicated system. And if you know how it works, you really respect what Honda did, 30 some years ago with VTEC. I mean, it's a really impressive feat of engineering that they were able to do that and make it a marketable thing. And you don't exactly hear about Honda engines failing.
And it didn't, that's one of those things is usually technology like that starts in higher end cars or race cars and then trickles down. This started in an affordable Honda.
Well, and even Toyota had it, they were doing it with their air intakes, but like the AE86, JDM one had variable intakes runners, right? That would allow for, at low speed, it would shut off a few, so it would, not bog, but it would run rich to keep the engine running when it was cold, and then when it was low. And then when you got higher in the RPMs, it opened up all the runners, right? Like, there was crazy stuff like that happening where, here in the United States, we just have big, cubic inch to place.
No replacement for displacement.
Oh, God bless. It's true, and I had a GTO. I loved it. But
until
turbos.
Engineering is the replacement for displacement.
I mean, GM's putting a dual overhead cam engine in the new Corvette. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting to see because I think it's kind of coming full circle now with a lot of the manufacturers doing similar things where they're coming up with all these tech advancements, whether it's safety, but these are coming from the lower base end models. I mean,
back
stuff
then.
like Honda making pretty much every sensor available and every sort of creature comfort with the adaptive cruise and all of the sensors and all of the blind spot stuff. That's standard for base model cars, and they've really pushed the envelope, and they always have been pushing the envelope on what should be on a normal car.
Speaking of that, I know I've been on a high horse about like headlights and on my soapbox about that, but like car manufacturers should make the optimum headlight standard on every model of their car, not this like lower model cars don't have
daytime runners
or don't have LEDs because they are more expensive. It's like that's a safety thing, and if we're going to be safety conscious about everything we do with these cars, headlights need to be one of them. And like just suck up the cost. Like it somehow it has to be that way because we shouldn't be using H11 halogen bulbs in cars anymore. It's ridiculous.
No, not in 2022. No, and while I do agree with that, I will say, I think some of these LEDs are a little too bright.
Well, yes, and I my truck is one of those trucks that
oh my God, yeah,
it's very bright, and I've gotten flashed by a lot of people, and not in the good kind of flash, the bad kind of flash.
They think your brights are on,
and then I blind them, and they veer off the road when I flash them back.
And then you run over them because truck,
yeah.
Even though your truck is a hybrid.
America truck, yeah.
It is a hybrid, and an electric one's coming out, and that'll be pretty cool. Well, guys, I think that's been a lot of great updates. I think I want to close with what you guys think should be on the next bull market list. Alex, you kind of said some JDM stuff. Jess, probably the Volvo station wagon. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, first of all, I did want to mention on the Volvo station wagons, the newer V70R with the turbo 5-pot is a sweet car.
Really?
And so cool. It's basically the newer version of that 245.
They have the Polestar edition for it as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. They're
the
super cool.
No, not when Polestar's a new company. It's the top end
when they were doing
when they were like
stuff.
a M brand. Yeah,
Got it.
But I mean, as far as JDM, obviously any GTR is just going absolutely nuts. So I would be shocked to not see at least a GTR of some generation on the next one.
James, what about you, buddy?
I think trucks. I think it's going to be... We're going to get into the 90s. I think you're going to start seeing a resurgence of like 92 to 96 Chevys, Fords, Dodges, things like that. That's an era where you had Dodge go for the first time to more of like a rounded body style. And I think you had a lot of unique styling with Chevy and Ford, and you got some of the old school truck feel with some of like the new school technology. EFI was starting to become more reliable technology and stuff like that. I think you're going to start seeing those just climb in price.
Jess?
The things that I think are going to continue to go up, have been going up since release, is things in kind of the Ferrari limited production realm. So things like the 458 Speciale, 599 GTO, they're quickly becoming close to the 599 GTO, especially $1 million cars.
Yeah.
458 Speciales are over 500,000 easy. Same with 488 Pista. I mean, all of these low production number performance Ferraris of the 2000, like late to mid 2000 teens are just continuously going up, and I think that those are continuing to rise and will be the next big Ferrari.
I think those are, I mean, every single one of those vehicles, whether it be the GTR, trucks in general, the nicer low production Italian stuff. Yeah, those all make a lot of sense. I think that we're going to start seeing some import Australian cars like Holdens and Fords, like
That would be
Falcons and
interesting.
things.
Yep.
I think those would be really cool to see and what their values do. Not to mention, like, I really like the Pontiac Gto of the 04 to 06 era. I think those are going to be kind of a underappreciated popular car because they didn't make them for very long and they didn't make very many of them. And you had an LS2 in them.
I have one more quick
Ooh,
weird
one more.
So I see them a lot. Just working at Hagerty, people are fans of them. The Chevy Ssr.
Oh, sure. I hope they burn. I hope they all burn.
I think they are a ridiculous car.
I hate them.
But a lot of people really like them as collector cars.
I lost in the Future Classic collection in a couple car shows to this one guy who had a yellow SSR. And I thought it was the most stupid looking thing.
They're pretty dumb looking.
Yeah, they're pretty ugly.
It is-
You're
it is
making
very
a truck
cool.
to completely defeat the purpose of owning a truck because it's also a convertible.
It had a short wheel or a short bed, so you couldn't really use it for things. It had the folding metal roof. Like,
I agree, but I also think
Yeah,
that they're
it's-
becoming more
it's
and
going
more
to be
popular
like
and
the
more money.
Prowler effect.
Prowler. Mm-hmm.
The real
Yeah.
question is, if we're going to combine car and truck, is it a tar or is it a...
what's the other one, James?
What word is that?
cuck?
God.
On that
And
note.
on that note, on that bombshell, it's time to end. Thank you for joining us tonight. And this will probably be your last episode of the Midwest Motoring Podcast. I'm glad you stuck around for this long. But join us. We're going to try to do it at least each and every week. I bring you guys some new automotive content. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out at Spreaker.com. Let us know if you guys want more content. If you've got an idea, we'd be happy to talk about it. But this has been the Midwest Motoring Podcast. We'll see you guys on the next one.